What's up, Taiwan? I'm Leslie Liao with news from here in Taiwan and around the world. Huge crowds piled in Taipei streets to celebrate Taiwan's national baseball team. After winning the country's first international championship, they were welcomed home as heroes. Our reporter Sandy Shi was there.
Baseball fans are on board to celebrate Taiwan's heroes. They've taken to the streets of Taipei to honor Team Taiwan, who won championship at the WPSC Premier 12 Baseball Tournament in Japan on Sunday. Many of the fans were excited to see their favorite players and cheer them on.
2013年输给日本队啊，而且现在逆转胜，而且隔了10几年，我觉得就是台湾棒球的转捩点。
这次是这冠军，这冠军真的是对啊，超开心的，真的超开心的，超棒的。我是希望说，就是大家继续把这个气势啊，就是延续到之后的 WBC， 还有2028年的洛杉矶奥运。
台湾真的要挺中华队，他们一路走过来是很辛苦的。虽然我也是一日球迷，可是我每一场几乎都看。
The athletes also went to the presidential office after the parade. President Lai Ching-te congratulated the players, praising their victory.
恭喜 Team Taiwan 所有台湾英雄为我国赢得第一座历史上世界级的冠军，感谢你们将台湾推上世界第一，你们都是台湾之光，也因为有你们，国际社会会看见台湾，知道台湾不是只有半导体，台湾还有棒球。
With this victory, this is a new chapter for Team Taiwan to earn more top spot at international competitions. Joseph Wu, Bryn Thomas, and Sandy Shi in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
A group representing families that hire caregivers for the elderly and disabled is calling for changes to Taiwan's system for hiring migrant workers. At an event in Taipei, they have said high costs and hidden fees lead many employers to break the law and hire undocumented workers. Chris Gorin brings us this report.
Taiwan needs to reform its system for hiring migrant caregivers for the disabled and elderly. That's the message delivered at the legislature by an organization representing families who need caregivers.
The average salary for a caregiver is $700. So we are compared like they are making here in Taiwan is 4 to 5 times more compared from what they make back home. But the problem is when they come to Taiwan, they think the salary is not good enough. Okay, but if we pay as much as the local ones, we cannot afford it. And because it's not enough, we will just find the illegal migrant workers in the black markets. For me, for example, it would be much cheaper and easier for me to hire the illegal ones. Do you want to encourage all the people in Taiwan to hire some illegal ones instead of going through the right process?
They say that families in need shouldn't have to pay a required monthly fee of about $60 while hiring migrant caregivers, which they say is a hidden tax on the disabled. And they say paying a monthly salary of about $680 per month to migrant caregivers is already a hardship for many families, leading many to hire undocumented workers illegally. Taiwan is projected to become a super-aged society next year, meaning 20% of people will be over the age of 65. And that number is only expected to increase over time, meaning more families will be looking to hire caregivers for elderly relatives. Balancing the need for caregivers with concerns about illegal immigration and Taiwan's low average salaries, this is an issue that affects families in their homes as well as their pocketbooks. Fu Hua Hong and Chris Gorin for TaiwanPlus.
To learn more about the labor issues facing migrant caregivers in Taiwan, reporter Chris Gorin spoke to Kylie Lee from the Garden of Hope Foundation.
Your organization works with both documented and undocumented migrant workers, including caregivers. What are they telling you about why some of them choose to become undocumented?
From my experience and from my chatting with the migrant workers, undocumented one, they are saying that sometimes they were abused and they were overworked for several times. For a long time, and nobody helped them. And even they ask the assistance from the broker. Once you are suffer for that kind of violent situation, no matter sexual abuse or harassment or physical abuse, labor abuse, for a long time you cannot stand. So finally, no one helped them. They run away.
How does the monthly pay for migrant caregivers in Taiwan compare to neighboring countries?
The salary the migrant workers, especially care workers, get in Taiwan is around $650. Comparing to some countries in Singapore and Hong Kong, a bit higher. But we'll say that in Singapore and Hong Kong, the salary, they can get better salary once they are skilled, or they can negotiate with employer. But in Taiwan, I will say that the average and the minimum amount and salaries they get is that number, always the same.
Well, the minimum wage under Taiwan's Labor Standards Act is $850 a month. So are you saying they make even less than that?
Migrant caregivers, yeah, they are paid less than best wage, minimum wage.
And their salary won't increase over time?
A bit increasing, a bit, yeah, but not meet the minimum wage in Labor Act.
And is that $680 or so enough to live on in Taiwan?
If you want to have your life in Taiwan, I think it's a bit hard and difficult, yeah. If they don't need any entertainment, no personal life, and they always work on Sundays and holidays, I think, yeah, cause you're doing nothing except from work. So for that kind of workers, they can save money and send home.
That was Kylie Lee from the Garden of Hope Foundation. A new program has seen some success in lightening the load for nursing staff at a hospital in northern Taiwan. Taipei Veterans General Hospital began the program to address high departure rates among nurses. The hospital hired assistants to help with more routine tasks, such as feeding patients. Since starting the program, staff retention has improved and nurses are able to clock out on time more. Medical professionals are now calling for measures to let hospitals hire nursing assistants from abroad.
我们是不是要引进外籍的护佐？但是绝对不能占到我们的护理师的人力，因为不能影响到你们。但是要分担你们。
Health officials say they will talk with the Labor Ministry about the idea. 13 women's and religious groups have formed an alliance whose goals include keeping surrogacy or paying a woman to carry someone else's child illegal. Surrogate motherhood is currently banned in Taiwan, though it tolerates citizens hiring women as surrogates abroad. It's a practice that's especially popular with single women and same-sex couples who aren't eligible for IVF treatment. Some groups are pushing to reverse that ban, but this new alliance wants it to remain, saying it exploits women's bodies.
有些经济弱势上面的妇女，她们也是为了金钱的缘故，所以她们就好像出租她们的子宫，有一些商业上面的那种，我们认为这个是不妥当的。
The debate over the issue shows a split not just in ethics, but in how to solve the problem of Taiwan's birth rate among the lowest in the world. Hong Kong's top court has upheld 3 landmark rulings that grant equal housing and inheritance rights to married same-sex couples. The government's housing authority had challenged a lower court ruling which granted the rights to same-sex couples who were wedded overseas. They argued the decision would affect the rights of straight couples, but the Court of Final Appeal dismissed the government's arguments, saying that differential treatment is a severe form of indirect discrimination. U.S. President-elect Donald Trump says he will impose 25% tariffs on imports from Canada and Mexico as soon as he takes office. In a social media post, Trump said these tariffs would remain in place until the flow of fentanyl and illegal immigration into the U.S. stops, calling it, quote, an invasion. Trump also promised an additional 10% tariff hike on China. Canada and Mexico are the United States' largest trading partners. The most recently available data shows trade between Canada and the U.S. totaled nearly $1 trillion, while trade with Mexico was slightly lower at nearly $900 billion. For more about the proposed tariffs, Alec McDonald spoke with Nick Morrow, lead analyst at the Economist Intelligence Unit.
If Trump posts 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico, this will result in higher prices for American consumers. So could these tariffs ultimately backfire on him?
They could. That's kind of the main political consideration and economic consideration that we're looking at over the next couple of weeks. It's going to require the Trump team to really get comfortable with the fact that right now, as the U.S. is battling inflation, these policies are going to reignite price pressures. U.S. voters, partially voted for the economy in November. And if we see kind of the blowback from these policy moves, then there could be some consequences. The big caveat is Trump's base tends to be quite forgiving. And so if we do see any, implications of this or shocks from this, it might not happen for a couple of months, but it's going to cause a lot of anxiety, particularly in the U.S. business community, among other U.S. trade partners, in terms of the direction of travel for where U.S. trade policy is looking at going in 2025.
In July of 2020, the United States signed a trade deal with Canada and Mexico. So with respect to that deal, is there action that Canada and Mexico could take to push back against these proposed tariffs?
Yeah, well, I mean, the threats that we're seeing from Donald Trump are essentially not really based on economic considerations. They're based on immigration. They're based on allegations of drugs flowing into the U.S. And so tariff imposition is happening kind of outside of the USMCA, suggesting that, in theory, the U.S. could be in violation of these provisions. That means that we'll be looking at how Mexico and Canada are going to respond, particularly from a retaliatory perspective. I think U.S. agricultural exports are going to be the sector to watch here. But it raises a lot of uncertainty around not just kind of, what's permissible under USMCA, but what this means for USMCA.
The Chinese embassy responded to the proposed tariff saying that nobody would win a China-US trade war. But this seems like a trade war on everybody right now. Is there anybody or any part of any supply chain which might come out ahead?
The moves that we've just seen out of, from Donald Trump are maybe the initial salvos in what looks like could be a pretty bruising trade war with the entire world. All that being said, I mean, based on where currencies go, whether we see exemptions, whether we see kind of the U.S. strike some carve-outs or negotiations with particularly key security economic partners, there could be some countries that are, less affected than others. I mean, those who we are anticipating to be the biggest losers would include China, Mexico. The next one we'll be looking at very closely is potentially Vietnam. But when we look at other countries like, Malaysia, Thailand, where, these nations haven't really been as much on Donald Trump's radar. They have benefited quite strongly from supply chain shifts over the past couple of years. And if we see their currencies depreciate against the dollar, we might see an offsetting effect on higher U.S. duties. And so those countries might actually stand to benefit from this. But this is an optimistic reading. At the end of the day, higher tariffs are going to lead to more inefficient supply chains. They're going to risk inflationary blowback.
That was Nick Morrow, lead analyst at the Economist Intelligence Unit. The world's most advanced microchips are one step closer to being made in Kaohsiung in southern Taiwan.
这个台积电的相关的这个需求，那也配合了整个这个半导体供需的这个情势，来协助台积电能够顺利的在高雄落地投资。
The world's largest chip maker, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, or TSMC, began moving equipment into its newly built chip fab in the city. The facility plans to begin mass producing chips using the 2-nanometer process in 2026. Clients Apple and AMD are expected to receive the first batches of product from the fab. Thank you for watching What's Up Taiwan. Finally, check out the Krampus Parade in Slovenia. I'm Liao. Take care and see you next time.